Eleni, maybe thank you for tuning in, and Humble Queen, and thank you for tuning in. And from hello, nice hearing from you. And while you're joining me this morning, could you just share the information so that we have many people tuning in? And if you just log in, thank you. Could you put me a note so that I understand that where you are joining me? And thank you for taking this opportunity to join me this morning. It's 9:21. We're starting a little bit late as scheduled, but we are on time. Uh, and thank you. It's a pleasure having you uh, joining in. My name is Fonton Daniel, and I will be speaking here live here in this great state of Texas. And thank you again. Share so that we have many people tuning in. And Martin Lawrence, thank you for joining in. Chris, thank you. I'm so glad that you guys take off your time to be able to listen to this here. Ongoing issues affecting the Anglophone territory. And thank you again. My name is Fonton Daniel, and I will be speaking live from here in the great state of Texas. And if you just joining in, could you share so that we have many people join us so that I understand that we are live, and I will be speaking here from the great state of Texas here in the United States. Once more again, my name is Fonton Daniel, and thank you for joining in. And share so that many people coming in so that they join us. It's very important. And thank you. Hello, yes, and great. If you just joining in or you're tuning in, and could you just share so we have many people join us so that we understand that I am here and I will be speaking with you, and it is important that we come together. Fabi, thank you for watching. And if you just joining me, could you share so we have many people so that we can start the deliberations? And thank you again. Uh, and also just indicate where you are, and appreciate, because I always go through my messages, see where they are. If you hear from this wonderful country, United States, the best system of government, the best government system. If you're here in the United States or in one of the states here in the United States, just indicate where you are, and I thank you for tuning in. And if you're in the South America, just indicate where you are in South America. If you're in Canada, just indicate where you are in Canada. And if you are in Europe, I'm glad my people in Europe, I'm sure they are awake because it's not their sleeping time. We always have hours different that we couldn't meet with them, but there are some that usually tune in. But if you are in Europe, then just indicate. And if you are whatever in Europe, so, and if you are in ground zero, I appreciate you to take time to be able to understand the difficulty and the challenges that you face in ground zero because of a lot of publics that marginalize, control every aspect of communications, and that we are not able to reach the people on ground zero. But if you have the opportunity to do so, I appreciate you to be able to manage to be able to log in. Otherwise, the people in ground zero will probably going to be watching live later when the opportunity rings. However, if you are in La Republic, and I want to thank you for having the opportunity to join me live, and And if you are in any of the African countries, if you're in Nigeria, if you're in Ghana, you're in South Africa, you're in Kenya, I mean, whatever part of Africa that you are and you're watching live, I want to thank you for taking this opportunity to watch me. And it is important that we talk about the issues affecting the Anglophone speaking territory. And if you're in China, and probably they might be sleeping because of the hours difference, you may have someone that may be still awake, or you wherever you are. And some even tuned. There was some from Turkey, and we were able to talk to them. If you're in Russia or whatever you are, I appreciate you for taking this opportunity to watch. And then this is Funto Daniel speaking here from the great state of Texas. And I want to take the moment to thank you guys for for joining me. And if you just joining me, could you share so that we have many people that join us? And I will be speaking here in a great state of Texas. And once more again, and you can also join me live on my YouTube account. You can type F Funton Daniel, FUNTONG Daniel on YouTube, and you Google it. You will also get me live, and I will be speaking also live on the YouTube as well. So you can always get me in both places. While I'm on live on Facebook, I'm also on live on YouTube. And thank you again once more and have an opportunity. And you can also subscribe me on my YouTube account as well. And that is another means of which we can share information, communicate to our people what is happening around the world. It is imperative that we share these informations because it is important. Information is power, information is knowledge, information provides skills, educate people about incidents and what happens within our society. And that is why we must able to share this important communicate. And once more again, thank you again for taking off your time and joining me. My name is Funton Daniel, and I will be speaking here from the great state of Texas. And thank you again. Uh, Before I proceed, I want to take a moment to thank the United States government. I want to take a moment to thank the United States government. The United States government is a very important government in the world. And when in terms of freedom, in terms of liberty of the people, that is the best government in the entire world, in the entire planet. We don't know whether there may be some other people in a different planet, which we haven't discovered yet. But we know what we do know that in our own planet, the best government system is here in the United States, the government of the United States. And the government of the United States is made up of three arms. You have the executive, the judicial, and the legislature. These three arms of government are separate. And each arm of this government applies check and balance to make the sound democracy in this most wonderful nation on earth. And that is why we're looking forward to have a system of government in the Anglophone territory. And that would be an exemplary government in Africa, as many people are still wondering what kind of government we are advocating. And if you have studied here in the United States, these great nations, then you will realize what I am talking about. There may be at times that things may be different. So that does not necessarily everything has to be universal, but things is working currently as the society, as the United States make a society a better place for human livable. And I want to thank the President of the United States. I want to thank the U.S. Congress. U.S. Congress. Remember, I always talked about the U.S. Congress because it's an important body, the United States branch of government. And I also talk about when this body wrote about the 24 member of this Congress wrote a letter to the Nikki Haley asking her to investigate about the ongoing genocide going on with the Anglophone territory, and that we are still looking forward, and we don't know, the government may not have released what actually is being taken in place. But however, we thanks the United States government to make that decision, especially that branch of government. We also thanks the Secretary of State, United States Secretary of State, for his efforts and his duty not only to reach the rest of the world, but make sure that fundamental principles, the rule of law, are applied in the rest of the society. And we are here asking the Secretary of State to reach out and see what is actually happening in the Anglophone territory, because it has become an area of genocide when people are being murdered and random people are being killed indiscriminately by the forces of La Republique. And that is the problems I'm going to be discussing here in the great state of Texas. And I also want to thanks U.S. Senate. The U.S. Senate is the branch of the legislature and the member of the Congress and the Senate. And this is an important body, so they work hand in hand to ensure that our democracy here in the United States prevail and has a sound and to the various society. And so I want to also take the moment to thank Nikki Haley. Nikki Haley is the U.S. permanent representative to the United Nations, and United Nations, which is the body responsible for the peace and security in the rest of the world. We understand that they haven't been able to do a good effort to reach out an ongoing crisis in the Anglophones. It's not just the Anglophone territory, but some other areas in Africa, including the Central African Republic. While the Anglophone case might not be exactly the same with the Central African Republic, it's because of this ongoing French influence. France wanted to control all aspects of the economy of the sub-Saharan Africa. In the process of doing so, instead of France coming as an economic bloc to be able to discuss the issues that is affecting Africa, if you want to become an economic bloc, and that would be an imperative, a joint venture to promote some other value. But instead, France thinks that he's a colonial country, and therefore he has to control all aspects of the social well-being of the African community. And this has dragged on and to create this chaotic scene, and that you find the Anglophone territory involves. The thing that France does not promote democracy as the basic fundamental principle, despite the fact that France has its own democracy and they elect their own president. And there have been a series of presidents that have been elected in France. And France doesn't see that as an issue while the Anglophones are rising, because they believe that there should be a form of democracy that prevails in the society. And because France doesn't see that, France wants someone that is in the head of the hegemony for the French interest, for the French policy. And so that is the problems that Africa doesn't enjoy the sound democracy. And they look Africa upon as a slavery. They look upon Africa as a property where they extract the resources and build French government, and that Africa become the slavery and the support of the French system, while the people are struggling to make ends meet. And this is the pathetic that is causing havoc in the African community, especially those of the sub-Saharan that believe to have a call France as a colonial master. There is a great difference between the French colony and the British colony. While the British colony allowed the people to enjoy sound democracy, economic prosperity, and advisory to these people to ensure that they have economic development, to empower the citizens and the people, both economic and educational system. And that is why you will find that most of the English-speaking colony in Africa are more well developed than the French colony, because France wants to detect whatever is the aspect of the economic principles. And in doing so, create a disgruntled harmony of government that become perpetuated by this French policy in Africa. But before I just want to take a moment to congratulate Samuel Ekome Sako, who is now the acting interim president of the Federal Republic of Ambazonia. Remember, the interim government, the interim cabinet of the Federal Republic of Ambazonia, Seseko and some cabinet members were meeting in Nigeria, in Abuja, and they were being abducted by the joint force of La Republic and Nigeria. The exact means and which they were being abducted has not clearly been indicated. The exact means in which the Nigerian joint venture with La Republic adopt the interim government hasn't been clarified, and no one knows exactly what happened. There may have been some lapses in security in protecting the interim government. But one question I have to still ask is, why would an interim government having a meeting, such a crucial meeting, and there was no security around? Because if there was security around, then the interim government someone should have been able to give a clear picture from the time the arrival, whether it was in Nigeria or La Republic joint force. Information is based on speculative because no one has been able to talk to one of the interim leaders. And every information is based on speculations. No one physically, because if there was security in place, the security purpose was not to face the forces of La Republic or the forces of Nigeria. But the purpose is to let the people understand that a certain element came and adopt them, because there is a gap between the time they arrived and the time they were abducted, and no one has given a clear picture. While this information is still pending and other investigation is still going around to know exactly what happens, we will continue with the new cabinet, the new acting president, which is Dr. Samuel Eko Sako and Milton. They will take over the leadership, and that the resistance and the forces will continue, and that we are asking La Republic to vacate our territory, and that our territory in this Anglophone-speaking territory is not negotiable. Our territory is a sovereign nation, and that we must stand firmly and tell La Republic and anyone appointed by La Republic, and that is residing in the Anglophone territory, we are asking you to leave the territory. Leave if you are or someone is currently residing in the Federal Republic of Ambazonian territory. You are asked by this to leave, to vacate, and move to La Republic. If you choose to remain in the southern Cameroon, you must denounce La Republic. And you do not make any decisions or communicate that has been designated to you by La Republic. And we are hereby notified that anyone or someone acting on behalf of La Republic is to vacate the territory. At the moment, we know the Nigerian government hasn't come out clearly indicate, despite the fact that the United Nations Refugee Agency has asked the lawyers, because Nigerian government is a signatory to the common law system, they are obligated to respond promptly once requested and abide by the regulations of the common law system. And they haven't, and the government hasn't. The government of Buhari hasn't made any statement, despite the fact that former president of Nigeria have come out plainly and notified Buhari about the consequences of doing so, violating the common law system, the common law principles to which Nigeria is a signatory. You cannot adopt a refugee and hand it to La Republique without going through the normal procedure. They may have not involved. La Republique may have violated the Nigerian sovereignty by illegally come into Nigerian territorial integrity by adopting the Southern Cameroon lead, the Federal Republic of Ambazonian interim government officials, without the knowledge of Nigerian government, because they've been sleeping, because of the ongoing bribery and corruptions carried on by La Republique secretly within the high ranking of the military wing or the secret service wing of the Nigerian government. There is a high level of bribery and corruptions that was bribed within the high level of the military wing. And that is why La Republique was able, if not a joint venture, but the exact fact is not clear. We will continue to investigate to know exactly what happens. And in the meantime, the interim government, there is a confirmed report that they may have been fiscally in La Republique, as we may have learned from the communication minister, Concho, or whatever it's Concho, or whatever, the donkey minister of communications. It is very, very unfortunate. It is very unfortunate that an interim cabinet has been adopted and no one has shown the images or pictures clearly to indicate that the cabinet of the Federal Republic of Ambazonia is residing in La Republique. The fact that if they are in the hands of La Republique, but we want to make it clear that the Southern Cameroon, another government will be formed and will be steadfast and will stand in the same goal, in the same objective, and in the same purpose for which the people of the Anglophone stand for. And that they will continue to persuade and use all aspects to free the people of the Southern Cameroon. And they shall stand tall, they shall stand firm, and there shall be no negotiable. And they shall stand, and they will stand one as one people until the last person will be able to lead the people of Southern Cameroon. As I'm speaking, this message is going directly to the British Prime Minister, Theresa May. This message going specifically to the British Prime Minister, Theresa May. As I'm speaking, there is indication that France has dispatched military wing to the Anglophone territory, no, to the La Republique territory, and they are currently in Douala. France has dispatched their military wing to La Republique, and they are in Douala, and another branch is in Yaoundé. This message may not have been known or may not have been provided to the general public, but the military wing of the French government has been dispatched to Douala, and another branch is in Yaoundé. But we are still waiting for Great Britain, under the auspices of Theresa May, to also dispatch the British Marine system to the Tico Wharf of the Tico seaport and Limbe seaport of Victoria. I know that was the colonial name, Limbe, but to Victoria. So we are asking British government to make the same response, and by dispatching the British Marine and the British Navy to the Anglophone territory in response to the French effort, because the people of Anglophones, they have got enough. Our territory is not for sale. Our territory is not for colonial administrator. Our territory is for the citizens of the southern Cameroon, of the Anglophone territory, the former British trusted territory. The land belongs to the people. The land belongs to the people. And if any foreign nations or foreign government want to provide economic or investment, investment is essential. Investment is for prosperity. Investment is for the interest of the both nations. But if France uses it for its own objective, as a form of decolonization and destructive means, we are here, let France understood and to understand that the Anglophones has risen and has risen and they have risen for the long haul, and that their territory shall not in any form shall be negotiable with La République. La République is not the ownership of the Anglophone speaking territory. The Francophones are not the ownership of to colonize the Federal Republic of Ambazonian. So I am asking the British Prime Minister to respond promptly and quickly, because France has dispatched its troops to Douala, and so therefore to make the equation balance, the Great Britain must honor its obligations. It is a duty of the Britain to protect the people of the southern Cameroon. It is a duty of the Great Britain and it is a duty of the British Parliament to do so soon and without delay. While I am also thanking the United States government for its effort, Southern Cameroon was never a colonial territory of La République. Southern Cameroon was never sold to La République. Southern Cameroon is a sovereign nation that was voted unanimously by the United Nations, the same body that proclaimed the La République. And so those are two separate nations. The Anglophone speaking has the power to its government and to decide the destiny. SDF has, since its launching, has not in any effort, La République has not shown any sense of that the SDF belongs to La République. When the SDF won an elections, the decision were made in France and was proclaimed in Cameroon, and who should be the president. And so when France goes to the poll to elect their president, African continent doesn't decide who should be the French president. And therefore, France cannot determine who should be in Africa. I understand many continents or many countries in Africa has embraced France. But unfortunately, I am here to tell you that France is the enemy of Africa. France is not to promote economic prosperity of Africa, but a destruction of Africa. Because when you look at the French investment, French doesn't have any industry in Africa. All the French does is to extract the material and process in France and send back in the higher prices to the same Africa, whereas they should have established the processing industry in Africa to promote economic prosperity. With all the 13 colonies that make up the African continent, France has no single of those 13 colonies that has a processing plant. Remember, France established an industry in Nigeria, but with all the colonies, none has any full-fledged functioning. And so many French colonies, they look upon France as the Jesus of Africa. But I am here to let you know that France is not. When Ivory Coast was fighting for liberations, France was a destructive force. In the middle of the night, France would bombard the presidency of Ivory Coast. And during the daylight, they stood up as the lover nations of Africa. When the Algeria stood up against French system, and France were bombarding the place, when the Algeria stood up for their freedom. And we have come to the conclusion that we, the Anglophone speaking, has a different form of government. And that form of government does not share by La République because they have the French system. And so the only way we can survive and preserve our sovereign dignity of our value is to leave La République and form our own nations, because we are a nation. We are simply living together as a simple understanding. We are not bound by La République in any memorandum or agreement. We are simply understanding that both of us can bring our economic bloc to work together for the mutual benefit of both nations. We are not a conquered territory. And I am bringing this case to the fellow American because they understand the basic fundamental principle of the value of the rule of law. The Anglophone speaking is a territory that initially by the United Nations voted in 1961, in which the United States government voted out decisions to support and implement that the Anglophone speaking territory become a sovereign nation. La République was not part of that decisions that voted. France was not part. France voted against the Anglophone territory. La République voted against the sovereignty of the Anglophone territory, and yet overwhelmingly the Anglophone territory independence was proclaimed. The fact that we are living together does not guarantee La République the ownership and control of our resources. And this has been a plan and executed by France with its ambassador in Cameroon, La République, to ensure that the identity and the value and the common value of the Anglophone to be wiped away in the entire West Africa. And how did they start? By assimilating. They began by transfer most of the French speaking to an Anglophone territory. Those form of assimilation appointed divisional officer. Divisional officer is some kind of a military form that has been implemented. And those officials have been appointed at La République. Divisional officer, government delegate, governors, and they're all dressed in uniforms as a military occupation wing. And they've been appointed by La République. They take control in every aspect of the human living in the Anglophone territory. First, the public health delegate is a Francophone. The divisional officer is a Francophone. The governor is a Francophone. Head of all major departments are headed by a Francophone. Department of Education are headed by a Francophone. Professors in the universities and the secondary educations are headed by a Francophone. These are the form of assimilations and simply wiping the cultural identity of the Anglophone speaking in the Anglophone territory. The court system are simply transferred by appointing The executive, the judiciary branch are being headed by the Francophones. And all these departments are headed by a Francophones. And in this form, they're simply transferring the civil law system to to Anglophone and implanted it with and simply undo the common law system in the Anglophone territory. And that is why the civil law system, this common law system, that is why the lawyer began advocating. They began to demonstrate. They began to demonstrate. The university joined them because they are being affected by this evil deed of La République and the complicity of the French government. So when they began to assimilate and incorporate the French system into the Anglophone territory, and that is why the Anglophone has to raise an alarm by the inhabitants. Just imagine in the great state of Texas, if you were in the hospital here or you went to a court, let's say you were traveling and you were speeding, and the police stop you and ask you, why were you speeding? And I have to give you a ticket. And then you have to pay the ticket to one of the court systems in the location wherever the ticket has been given. That has the authority over that jurisdiction that your ticket was handed here in the state of Texas or here in any state of the United States. And when you travel that particular day that your court had been scheduled and you arrive at the court system and you realize that the judges that is presiding over your case is speaking in German, and that is case is presided over that the judges presiding over your case is speaking in Russian, and that the judge presiding over your case is speaking in Chinese. The obvious question you will ask is, why in the state of Texas should I have a Chinese speaking rather than the English language which I was grown up? You will immediately and rapidly start calling your congressman. Why is this happening? I don't believe that I'm going to my case and I am being presided over by a Russian speaking Russian language in the state of Texas. That would have been an immediate question you will ask. That is a problem that Anglophone speaking. I'm bringing this kind of scenario from American people to understand where I am coming from and the situation, how it has escalated to this level. So the court system in the Anglophone territory has simply been replaced. They were simply being replaced with the Francophones. And when the Francophones take the system, they only not abolish the value of the common law system of the Anglo-Saxon way of life. They simply distort the information and present it in a destructive way. They are being in the police, in the executive branch where you have the gendarmerie. The gendarmerie is a very destructive force and is a branch of the French government. It's been incorporated by French, and they carry on brutality. They do not abide by the legal system. They do not abide by the judicial system. They do not even appear in court when they are being invited to. They think they are above the law. And that is the system that is chronic. That is the system that controls the entire La République, the gendarmerie. And now the rapid intervention. And they have been carried on destructive in the Anglophone territory. And this case that I'm bringing is because United Nations has not. United Nations that is here in the United States, here in New York. The United Nations head office, the United Nations headquarters, the United Nations decision body. The purpose of the United Nations is to ensure peace and security. The United Nations office here in the United States, the purpose of that body that was formed after the 1945, it was to maintain peace and security, to ensure that peace reigns in the rest of the world. and it is very strategic importance. But the United Nations has become a tool that be used not only because it be headed by people without sound knowledge and understand the value and the purpose in which it was stood for, but the United Nations are being headed by individuals that travel to this country where you have a brutal dictatorship that has been in power for 35, 36 years. Pobia, it's not only them, but other African countries and the other part of the world that experience this same similar crisis. Instead of United Nations to indicate to the Pobia regime government that the people of the Anglophone speaking is a sovereign nation equally like La Republic. The people of the Anglophone speaking is a sovereign nation equally like La Republic. They have the right and the freedom. They have the right to choose their destiny. They have the right to decide what is their future. They have the right, and they have the right to pull back at will because they were a sovereign nation that was voted. And because they were a sovereign nation that was voted by United Nations, they have the right to renegotiate if they choose to leave with La Republic, or they can choose to stay and to go their way. And that doesn't prompt La Republic for any invasions. And that is why when the former government of the Federal Republic of Ambazonian, when they left Nigeria, they had their own police force, they have their own military, they have those to protect the citizens. La Republic, in a continual assimilation and destructive disintegrating the Anglophone speaking territory. When La Republic continued this destructive, disintegrating, dismantling of the Anglophone territory, that is why we are here to let the world know that the Anglophones has risen, and that the Anglophone is no longer part of La Republic, and the Anglophone is now a sovereign nation. The Anglophone has a government. The fact that they are being arrested and adopted under the auspices of France, Nigeria, and La Republic does not disturb or prevent the people of the Southern Cameroon. And another government will be formed, and another government will stay, and another government will stand, and we will stand, and will fight, and will prepare for the sovereignty of the Anglophone speaking. Because the value of the Anglophone is not negotiable. The Southern Cameroon, or the former British Trusted Territory, when they had their government under the British administrator, they were in Nigeria, in the Enugu House of Assembly. They had a very sound discussion with the Nigerian. The Nigerians were allowed for them to make their choice. When they choose to leave Nigeria, the Nigerians did not invade the Anglophone territory. The Nigerians did not fight back. The Nigerians simply acknowledged that it was another nation that they have chosen their destiny. The Nigerians did not invade. The Nigerians did not fight war. The Nigerians did not clear. They simply respect the Anglophone decisions. That of the benevolent neutrality. Benevolent neutrality is the member of the Anglophone speaking member of parliament stating to the Nigerian authority that we no longer be part of Nigeria. We have chosen to embark and form our own government. And that is why they elected Prime Minister Ndele and Jongu Foncha. Remember, Jongu Foncha is the one person that negotiated with La Republique. And it is the same Jongu Foncha that tabled a document to the United Nations that the relationship that I have persuaded with La Republique is no longer functions. And United Nations has deliberately ignored and failed to release the document and share it that this is the people of the Southern Cameroon, this is the people of the Anglophone territory, this is the former British territory. and that the former prime minister that negotiated the relationship with La Republic has tabled a document asking that my relationship with La Republic has not been fruitful, and I am hereby notify you that we no longer be part of La Republic, and this document was tendered to the United Nations, and United Nations deliberately and ignorant to fail in all aspects to recognize that document. I am here speaking here in the great state of Texas. I am bringing this case because United Nations Secretary General traveled instead of investigating and find the factual information and present the case to the member of the United Nations that this is the people of the Anglophone speaking, the former British Trusted Territory, the people that voted, that the world body voted in 1961, that as a sovereign nations, though the former Prime Minister, John Foncha, has risen to our body about the relationship that is no longer fruitful as initially agreed upon. The United Nations hasn't recognized that document. The United Nations hasn't recognized that several members of the Southern Cameroon has written to this body a request that their relationship with the Republic is no longer fruitful. Because the United Nations has not taken into consideration, acknowledged the factual about the Anglophone speaking that have presented to them in relationship of how they have been living together with La Republic, and the continual assimilation and destructive of the Anglophone value in the Anglophone speaking territory. But United Nations representative, he traveled for gold collections rather than the purpose for which the taxpayers, not only here in the United States, but all the Europeans and all members of the United Nations office, is the taxpayers of these citizens that have contributed for the purpose of maintaining peace and tranquility, and that body must be objective and clarity to give a factual information to this body to be able to make good analysis and be able to release those factual information for the goal of the peace and security for the rest of the world combined. But however, United Nations hasn't. United Nations has appointed individual in the sub-Central African region. It's called Francois Le Force. Francois is poor knowledge, poor skill, sound knowledge to be able to head that important body to give credibility and good analysis of the political situation that is affecting the Central African region. In his wrong judgment, his poor knowledge, his poor skill to be able to give a clear factual information, instead of giving him to report to the United Nations that the people of the Anglophone speaking, the people of the former British Trusted Territory, the people that the person, John Foncha, who is of late, has written to the United Nations that the relationship that existed between La Republique and the Anglophone speaking is no longer fruitful. And it is this continual disgruntledness and this assimilation of the Anglophone speaking that has prompted people to demand their total suppression of La Republique. Instead, the sub-Central African region, United Nations representative, wrote a misguided knowledge about his skill and his poor judgment relating to the United Nations that the people of the Anglophone is a terrorist. I can imagine his mental stability, his judgment, his reasoning, and making such a disgruntled remark to the body United Nations. I am kind of concerned about his own mental judgment to be able to give those kind of analysis, because La Republique, in the first place, has someone who is 85 years. He's mentally challenged. Once you reach a certain level in your age, you become what they call forgetfulness. You are mentally challenged. You are mentally incapable of carrying on a good judgment, a sound knowledge. And because someone at the 85 years, Pobia, at the 85 years or 84 years, whatever his age is, he lacked the moral judgment. He lacked the clarity to analyze what is happening in Cameroon. He's been guided by a certain clique. And that clique is the one that controls him. He no longer makes a clear, sound reasoning as you and I. And yet, this person individual in the Central Africa, Francois Lefort, give his own analysis that the people are terrorists. An Anglophone in their territory become a terrorist in their home. Who is more of a terrorist? La République, who is a terrorist in the Anglophone speaking territory, or the Anglophone born in their territory become a terrorist in their land? Let's bring the case here in the great state of Texas. The people of the United States, the people of the great state of Texas, Texas initially voted to remain a sovereign nation. And they had the right to do that. And Texas voted and become an independent nation. And they voted to join the United States. United States did not declare them as a terrorist because they have an obligation to do so. The great state of Texas enjoy the most benefit economic system. They practice federal system of government that allowed an elected governor, that allowed an elected mayor, that allowed the police. I mean, there is a great harmony in the great state of Texas. And that enjoy the benefit in this union of the great country called United States. They enjoy the same government. They enjoy the same value. The cost system is legal. It is mutual benefit. Seseko, the interim president, and Pobia, when they give two together, compare two of them together, who has the mental judgment to make good analysis and good credibility? Pobia can't. Pobia is mentally challenged. He's mentally deranged. He cannot even remember his children's name. He cannot remember his wife's name. Pobia doesn't remember his wife's name. Pobia doesn't remember his children's name. He's old. His value has diminished. Why should a Central African representative that is being funded by the taxpayer money here in the United States are giving wrong analysis, giving wrong factual report, giving factual wrong information, and he's still heading here in the United States? I think it's disgraceful to have someone with mentally challenged heading an important body in the Central African region giving wrong judgment and wrong credibility about his reasoning. And I am frustrated to have such a person when we have good people with sound knowledge and good judgment to be able to head such an organization, to give good credibility. And yet, the people have been murdered. In Anglophone speaking, there are 40,000 people, and the number may have increased, that are currently in Nigeria. They don't even have basic food. The people in the physical land in their territory, they are being invaded by La République. They are being killed at a random. And if I've shown the images here, it will be very horrifying for the people to visualize. And yet, La République is claiming ownership of the sovereignty of the people of the Anglophone speaking. I am here inviting the United States government. I am here inviting the US Congress. Create an independent body to investigate what is the crime and inhumanity that is happening in the Anglophone speaking territory. Maybe the US ambassador is not giving factual information exactly what is happening in the Anglophone territory to the State Department. But I am here to let the State Department and the fellow Americans, because the Anglophone is in a state of agony. The Anglophone speaking is in a state of dismay. The Anglophone is in a state of destruction. And the people are being murdering at random. And the evil force of La République, under the control of French government, are just massacring, killing the people of citizens with that indiscriminately. And the people has to use every imaginable means to protect its citizens. When children, when young boys and girls are being raped, when boys are being murdered in their prime age, children at 15, 16, 17 age, those children, boys in those ages are being murdered indiscriminately by the evil force of La République. And yet the world remains silent, because the major media cannot mention about it in a national television. But we want to thank those who are making effort. The Al Jazeera is making every effort to present the case. Why the United Nations and many other Fox News, they don't look at it because it be of lesser interest. But I am here presenting my case to the fellow American people, because they understand the basic fundamentals. When people are being murdered, when people are being ransacked, when food are being destroyed by a nation that has no relationship for the Anglophone speaking. I understand that you are listening and you are here in the United States. You are either a congressman, you are either a member of the cabinet of the Donald Trump's government. I know you have a duty to do something. Will you do that for me? Will you ask La République to account of what is going on? Will you ask the United Nations to account of what is happening in the Anglophone territory? Because United Nations is silent over the destruction that is going on in the Anglophone speaking territory. Fellow Americans, I am proud to be a citizen of these great nations. I am proud because of the knowledge and the skill that was instilled in me. I am proud because of the social and the economic structure, the government, the entire system of the United States. I am proud to be part of this system. But when I look back at where I came from, and I look back at the destruction, and I look back at the government system, and I look back and I find someone that is mentally challenged, someone that has been in power for 35 years. Why I look at the young generation, we're mentally capable to provide economic prosperity for the next generation of African continent, and yet they don't have that opportunity because a certain individual is using guns that are provided by the French government, and they're being murdering these people at a random, are being murdered indiscriminately. They are being destroyed the entire Southern Cameroon territory. Why should the people of Southern Cameroon become disgruntled? First, the Anglophone speaking territory, they don't even have a single airport that is functioning. La République has 3 airports, the Douala, the Yaoundé, and the Maroua, and it's functioning to its full capacity. The Anglophone speaking territory, they don't even have a single airport that one can be proud of that is full functioning. The Tico Airport has become an animal rearing facilities where animals like goats, cows, and whatever you can name, and now become the housing, become the urban area in that particular airport in Tico. The Bafut Airport is becoming an area where antelopes, antelopes, goats, whatever is managing the airport. I guess maybe the goat will be taking flight to land in the Bafut Airport because it became non-functional. The Anglophones has become a land of destructive under the auspices of French government and La République, and yet the people have no opportunity. It takes, in terms of infrastructural development, there is no road network. When you leave from the Kwakwa, when you travel to the Mamfe, when you travel to the entire southwest region, it's difficult because it takes probably 2 to 3 weeks to travel a distance that usually takes about 2 to 3 hours if you were here in the United States. And you may understand if you happen to be here in the United States. It takes 2 to 3 weeks to make that journey. And yet, the people have nothing to benefit of. In the Northwest region, it takes 3 to 4 weeks to travel from one location to the next. And yet, the people cannot be proud of. But they have divisional officers that distort money from the citizens. They have gendarmerie that distort people from the citizens. They go into people's house, break their houses, collect money, distort their property, and burn them in abusive and barbaric act. And yet, nobody is able to portray these images. Because, is it because Africa are the lesser class? But I am here to present this case to the people of the world that United Nations here in the United States need to release its document. As you delay, the country turn into chaotic scene. But it is time to promptly respond and release the document and show to La République that the people of the Southern Cameroon has risen and that they have chosen their destiny and to become a sovereign nation. And they have had their interim government, and La République should, in any circumstances, involve in these sovereign nations. La République has their territory. They should concentrate on their territory and let the Anglophone concentrate on their territory and define their structure according to the people's wishes. And in this end, I am asking, if you have been appointed by La République and you are residing in Anglophone territory, we are asking you to leave, to vacate. Otherwise, we will be recognize you as a persona non grata on the Anglophone territory. You can choose denounce La République and stay as a Southern Cameroon or the Federal Republic of Ambazonian, or we will welcome you to stay. But if you choose to stay and think that you are the government of La République, we will consider you as a persona non grata to our sovereign territory. I know there are some people that call the CPDM and that they are residing in Anglophones. We are making this statement clear to you that if you ever seen, put on that dirty uniform, say CPDM, you will be joining La République, maybe in different form or in different structure. The people has come to the conclusion that La République is not part of an Anglophone territory. And if you be part of that system and that you choose La République and you become putting on those uniforms, we will consider you that you are personally non grata to the Southern Cameroon, to the Anglophone territory, and you will be departed in a different form. We are asking SDF. You can choose to go and run in La République. But Southern Cameroon is now a sovereign nation and shall in any form join La République. And if you're a member of the SDF, you can travel and stay in La République. Or you choose and denounce La République because we shall come after you in our great numbers. We have got enough of La République, and we will continue and we'll continue protect and preserve and protect the people of the Anglophone speaking. And it's a pleasure speaking to you today. And I want to thank the government of the United States. I want to thank the government of the great state of Texas to ensure peace and security bring in the Anglophone territory. And it was Fonton Daniel speaking here in the great state of Texas. Thank you and wish you all the best the rest of your day.